When you accept no one cares, everything changes. Did you know that studies show almost 90% of the things people worry about never actually happen? Think about that for a second. 9 out of 10 fears, anxieties, and late-night mental spirals. They vanish into nothing. Marcus Aurelius realized this nearly 2,000 years ago when he wrote, "Today I escaped from anxiety," or no, I discarded it, because it was within me, in my own perceptions, not outside. The Stoics understood something most of us are only beginning to catch up to, that much of what torments us isn't the world itself, it's our expectations of how the world should respond to us. Let me share a moment from my own life. A few years back, I went through one of those painful experiences where I assumed the people closest to me would show up. I was struggling silently, waiting for someone to notice. I thought, surely they'll see it in my face, hear it in my voice, pick up on the weight I was carrying. But they didn't. Days went by, weeks, no one asked. And I felt crushed, not only by the problem itself, but by the loneliness of realizing nobody else seemed to care. But here's the twist. That very silence, that very indifference, was the birthplace of a strength I didn't know I had. It was the same shift the Stoics spoke of, the moment when you stop waiting for someone else to fix your pain and you begin to carry it yourself. That was the moment I began becoming rather than performing. The theme of today's journey is this. When you accept that no one cares, everything changes. And I know that might sound cold, even harsh, but I promise you, it's one of the most liberating truths you will ever internalize. Here's why. Most of us carry a quiet fantasy that if we hurt enough, if we cry hard enough, if we explain ourselves well enough, someone will step in. Maybe it's a partner, a friend, a family member. We've been raised with this soft belief that pain equals recognition, that if I suffer, the world owes me comfort. But life doesn't work like that. Tears go unnoticed, texts go unanswered, birthdays are forgotten. People are consumed by their own chaos, and if you build your identity on being seen, you will spend your life feeling invisible. It's not cruelty, it's reality. Everyone is fighting battles you cannot see. Just as your pain is invisible to them, their struggles are invisible to you. And if you can pause long enough, you'll recognize the lesson hidden inside that ache of being overlooked. That clarity begins the moment you stop expecting the world to reward your suffering. Let me bring this down to something practical. Carl Jung once wrote, "The world will ask you who you are, and if you do not know, the world will tell you." But here's the catch. Most people aren't really asking because they care. They're asking so they can put you in a box that makes sense to them. They don't see you. They see their idea of you.
And if you keep performing for that gaze, you'll spend your life trapped in someone else's story. When you let go of that need, you finally begin to live your own. There's a sorrow that comes with realizing you are not the main character in anyone's story but your own. But there's also an incredible freedom. No one owes you understanding. No one is required to carry your hand through the fog. And that means the fire you build inside is yours alone. That disappointment that once cut you so deeply, it transforms into clarity. And clarity, my friend, is the first real freedom. This is the heartbeat of Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about your neighbors. Translation, stop waiting for someone else to name your worth. The more you focus on being seen, the less you see yourself. Ironically, the more you try to prove your pain to others, the more invisible you become. But the moment you let go of that illusion, that's when something indestructible begins to grow. Not because you've become harder, but because you've become clearer. And here's the truth most people don't want to admit. Just because others don't care doesn't mean you're unworthy. It means they're human, flawed, overwhelmed, distracted, just like you. Everyone is drowning in their own storms. The game was never about being noticed. The real game is realizing that you are the one who's been watching yourself all along. You've been the witness to your own mind, your own decisions, your own growth. That's not a curse. It's a gift, because it means you are the one with the power to change the narrative. Not them. You. Epictetus said it simply. Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. When you stop hoping to be seen, you begin becoming. Not for attention, not for applause, but because something inside you refuses to stay small. That pain that once felt unbearable becomes your blueprint. The silence that once haunted you becomes your teacher. The solitude that once scared you becomes your home. And when that shift happens, you don't need to broadcast your wounds anymore. You carry them differently, not as a burden, but as proof that you kept going. Let's pause here. Think about your own life. How many times have you hit pause on your growth, waiting for someone to give you permission to continue? Waiting for that one voice to say, yes, now's the right time, go ahead. But what if that permission never comes? Would you stay frozen forever? Or would you finally claim the authority that was always yours? That's where real power begins, not in being chosen, but in choosing yourself. The Stoics knew that freedom doesn't come from external support. It comes from mastering yourself. Epictetus wrote, "No person is free who is not master of themselves." That means freedom isn't about applause, it's about discipline. It's about showing up even when the room is empty, even when no one cares, even when no one is watching.
Because the work matters, because you matter. And when you show up like that, not for recognition, but for respect of yourself, you begin to trust yourself. You start to keep the promises you make to yourself. That right there is the currency of freedom. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Doesn't this sound lonely? Doesn't this sound like giving up on human connection? Absolutely not. Stoicism doesn't ask you to stop loving others or to wall yourself off. It asks you to stop outsourcing your stability, to stop depending on other people's reactions for your sense of worth. That's what self-reliance really looks like. Not the absence of need, but a deep steadiness that says, even if no one sees me, even if no one comes, I will keep going. That's the kind of freedom you can't fake. That's the kind of resilience no one can take away. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop chasing recognition, you often begin to attract it. People feel the energy of someone who doesn't need the room. They sense the quiet gravity of a man who stands on his own. Seneca put it perfectly. The greatest empire is to rule oneself. And ruling yourself doesn't mean perfection. It means consistency. It means doing what matters even when no one claps. So, as we close this first part, let me leave you with this thought. You don't need to be seen to become something great. You need to see yourself clearly, honestly, without decoration. That's where everything changes. That's where your real life begins. And if this message is striking something inside you, if you feel the weight of this truth landing in your bones, I encourage you, subscribe to this channel, not as a favor to me, but as a quiet vow to yourself. A vow that you're ready to stop chasing applause and start building something the world can't ignore. In the next part, I'll reveal the Stoic habit that changed my life forever, and it's something you can start practicing today. Don't miss it. You and I left off with a hard truth. Once you stop waiting for the world to validate your pain, you stop freezing your life. Now I want to give you the single Stoic habit that detonated the old patterns in my head and rebuilt my day from the inside out. It's simple, unglamorous, and ruthlessly effective. A daily practice of premeditatio malorum, premeditation of adversity, paired with a 5-minute control audit. I stumbled into this in a season when everything felt unstable. Mornings were chaos. Email, news, a meeting pinging me before coffee. I'd walk into the day like a boxer who forgot his mouthguard. And then, almost by accident, I began rehearsing the day's potential problems before they hit. Not catastrophizing, rehearsing. Seeing it, bracing for it, planning my response. Within 2 weeks, my nervous system felt different. Fewer spikes, fewer flare-ups, more composure, more authority.
Marcus Aurelius did this every morning. When you wake up, tell yourself, today I will meet interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness. That's not pessimism. It's psychological inoculation. Modern research calls this cognitive reappraisal and implementation intention. When you imagine a trigger and pair it with an if-then plan, your brain spends less time in panic and more time in execution. You don't eliminate difficulty, you strip it of surprise. And surprise is what turns a challenge into a meltdown. Here's the drill as I use it now. 3 minutes. Visualize the likely frictions of the next 12 hours. The late client, the passive-aggressive email, the traffic, the family member who pushes your buttons. Then, 2 minutes, run the control audit. Split a page down the middle. On the left, list what you can control. Preparation, tone, schedule buffers, your response speed, your breath, your posture. On the right, what you can't. Others' moods, the market, a flight delay, that random algorithm. Epictetus wrote, "Some things are up to us and some are not." We quote this line because it's catchy, but living it is what gives you an unshakable center. Once you see the split on paper, you stop spending your day trying to dominate the right column. You unhook from the madness. But here's the twist. Most people do a version of this in their heads and still blow up later. Why? Because they skip the body. Your physiology is the fuse. So stack 1 minute of breath on top. 4 seconds inhale through the nose, 6 seconds exhale, repeated 5 times. You're teaching the nervous system, we are safe, we are prepared. The composure you feel isn't mystical, it's mechanical. Seneca backs this approach with brutal clarity. The man who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive. Anticipation removes the drama, and drama, if we're honest, has been our secret addiction. When we accept that no one is coming to regulate our nervous system for us, we claim the authority to regulate it ourselves. That's adulthood. That's freedom. Let's make it painfully practical with 3 everyday battlegrounds. First, the inbox ambush. You open your email, and the first subject line sucker punches your focus. Before this practice, you'd spiral. Now you run your if-then. If an urgent email arrives before 10 a.m., then I move it to a noon triage folder and reply with a 2-sentence acknowledgement, not a full solution. You protect your morning deep work. You protect your mind. You respond, you don't react. This is the dichotomy of control in action, plus the behavioral science of implementation intentions. The result? Less firefighting, more building. Second, the conversation that always turns sideways. You know the one. A colleague, a relative, a neighbor. You visualize it. You pre-choose your posture. Grounded, shoulders down, voice slow. You set a boundary sentence before the call. I can talk for 10 minutes, then I have a commitment. If things escalate, you use a timeout line. I want to give this attention, so I'm going to pause here and pick it up tomorrow. Marcus again. Be like the cliff against which the waves continually break. It stands firm. Boundaries are the cliff. The waves are predictable. Your calm is not an accident. It's architecture. Third, the late-day craving. Doom scrolling, junk food, that habit you promise you'll quit tomorrow. You pre-see the urge around 9:30 p.m., then pre-place an alternative. Shoes by the door, glass of water on the nightstand, book on the pillow. If the craving hits, you stand up and do 60 seconds of wall push-ups or a short walk on the block. Not because push-ups burn away vice, but because movement severs the thought loop. Epictetus again. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. You will look a little odd pacing your street at 9:37 p.m. Good. You're building a life, not performing one. But I've tried planning and life still blindsides me. Of course it does. Premeditation isn't a shield, it's a steering wheel. You still get hit by weather, by layoffs, by illness. The Stoic move is not to predict perfectly, but to remain usefully oriented. You ask, what can I still do? How can I still move? That question pulls you from victimhood to authorship. In neuroscience terms, you flip from an amygdala-dominant stress response to prefrontal engagement. In human terms, you stop spiraling and start deciding. Let me give you a real-world example. A client of mine, a contractor in his 50s, was drowning in supply delays and client complaints. Every morning felt like a brawl. We installed the 5-minute practice. He visualized the hardest client calling at 8:15 a.m. He wrote a 2-sentence script in advance. I hear your frustration. Here are 3 options. A is quickest, B is cheapest, C is strongest. Which do you prefer? He moved from apology to leadership. Complaints didn't disappear, his exhaustion did. His team started borrowing his calm. That's the quiet contagion of composure. Now for a pattern interrupt. There's a subtle danger hiding inside this habit. If you're not careful, premeditatio malorum turns into cynicism, walking through life with clenched fists. That is anti-Stoic. The goal is not to expect the worst, it's to be unsurprised by it. Expect to be tested, plan to respond well, and stay open to good surprises. Seneca reminds us we suffer more in imagination than in reality. The imagination can be an ally when it prepares you. It becomes an enemy when it punishes you. 3 micro steps to start tomorrow morning. 1. Write the split list before you touch your phone. Left column, control. Right column, not control. Keep it to 5 bullets each. If it's more than 5, you're negotiating with yourself. 2. Choose a single if-then for your biggest trigger.
If my boss messages before my deep work block, then I acknowledge and schedule a proper reply at noon. 1 line. Tape it to your screen. 3. Teach your body the new story. 5 slow breaths. 4 in, 6 out. Shoulders drop, jaw unclenches, eyes soften. You are not sprinting, you are steering. Tie this back to our core thesis. When you accept that no one is coming to regulate your day, you become the regulator. You stop outsourcing calm. And when you stop outsourcing calm, you stop outsourcing power. Marcus gives us the anchor. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. It's not a slogan, it's a schedule. Do the 5 minutes, and you'll feel the difference in the first argument you don't have and the first impulse you don't obey. Let me ask you directly. Have you ever tried premeditatio malorum for a full week, 7 straight mornings without skipping? What happened? Where did you break? What surprised you? Share your experience in the comments. Your pattern might help someone else tighten theirs. And if this is helping, hit subscribe so you don't miss what's next. We're building a library of practice, not just ideas. Before we close, a quick value preview. The next section might be the most crucial pivot you'll ever make. We're going to take this control audit and drive it deeper into your identity. How you talk, where you sit in a meeting, the way you hold your eyes when someone tries to bait you. The technique is small, the impact is massive. This next lesson alone is worth your time. For now, carry this with you.
Preparation is compassion for your future self. 5 minutes in the morning gives the man you'll be at 4 p.m. a fighting chance. You don't owe the world a perfect day. You owe yourself a prepared one. And the moment you start giving yourself that gift consistently, you become the kind of man who doesn't beg the world to be gentle because he's trained himself to be formidable. Let's pick up where we left off. You now know how to use premeditation and the control audit to anchor your mornings. But what happens when the world doesn't just nudge you, it shoves you? When you walk into a room and feel dismissed, misunderstood, or flat out ignored. This is where the next Stoic habit comes in. Detachment from perception. It's the discipline of refusing to let other people's view of you become your reality. Here's the thing. Every single day, people are interpreting you. They're not seeing you. They're seeing their version of you. A boss glances at you and thinks lazy because you didn't respond in 30 minutes. A friend hears your silence and thinks cold. A stranger on the road sees your driving and thinks rude. None of these labels are you. They're mental shortcuts created in other people's minds, shaped by their upbringing, wounds, expectations. And if you spend your life performing to fix their perception, you'll never get to meet the real you.
Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject. And the subject is you. Most of the people passing judgment on you don't know the full story. Yet how often do we hand over the keys to our peace of mind because of a glance, a word, or a silence? It's madness, but it's the madness we've been trained in since childhood. I remember a season early in my career when I was obsessed with reputation. Every email had to be crafted perfectly. Every meeting had to end with a nod of approval. Every silence made me panic. If I didn't get instant recognition, I assumed I had failed. That constant scanning of the room for approval was exhausting, and it robbed me of my ability to actually perform. The turning point came when I realized, no matter how much I polished, someone would still misinterpret. No matter how carefully I spoke, someone would still dislike it. So why was I paying rent in other people's heads while abandoning my own? Here's where modern psychology catches up with Stoicism. Research on the spotlight effect shows we overestimate how much others notice about us. In one experiment, participants wore an embarrassing t-shirt into a room and later predicted that over 50% of people noticed it. In reality, only 23% did. What feels like a glaring flaw to us barely registers with others. They're too wrapped up in their own storms. That's exactly what Marcus meant when he said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Outside events include other people's opinions. But here's the twist. Detachment isn't about becoming cold or arrogant. It's about clarity. You stop trying to manage what was never in your control in the first place. You don't owe endless explanations to everyone who misunderstands you. Epictetus put it bluntly, "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." He wasn't telling you to be foolish. He was warning you that growth often looks foolish to the crowd. So accept the misinterpretation. Stop trying to correct the noise. Let's make this painfully practical with 3 domains of daily life. First, conversations. Someone questions your choice, maybe your workout, your diet, your financial decision. Instead of launching into a 10-minute defense, try the 3-word response. That's your view. Short, calm, and boundary setting. You don't fight, you don't justify, you let their opinion stay where it belongs, in their mind. This isn't arrogance, it's sovereignty. You are choosing not to rent your peace to someone else's passing thought. Second, meetings. You present an idea, and the room goes silent. No applause, no nods, maybe even a few raised eyebrows. Old you panics, backpedals, over-explains. Stoic you breathes once, anchors in your chair, and remembers silence is not rejection. People process at their own pace. Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Don't create a story about what the silence means. Present, pause, and let it land. The truth will reveal itself in time. Third, social media. the breeding ground of distorted perception. You post something meaningful and one snarky comment derails your whole day. Here's the control audit again. What's in your control? Posting with integrity. What's not? Who likes, who mocks, who scrolls past. Instead of arguing with strangers, ask yourself, would I respect this person's opinion if I met them in real life? If not, why are you sacrificing your peace for it? Now, let's tie this habit to something deeper. Carl Jung said the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But here's the paradox. You can't become who you truly are if you're addicted to perception management. Because the moment you twist yourself to fit their box, you're not you anymore. You're a mask. Jung called that mask the persona. Necessary at times, but dangerous when it becomes your identity. Stoicism trains us to live behind the mask as little as possible. So how do you train detachment from perception without becoming numb? 3 steps. Step 1. Micro-refusals. Practice letting small misunderstandings stand. If someone says, "You're quiet today," instead of scrambling to explain, simply reply, "Yes, I am." That's it. No justification. You'll feel the itch to explain. Resist. That's the muscle growing. Step 2. Reframe judgment. When someone criticizes you, remind yourself, this says more about their lens than your value. Marcus again. If an opinion is sound, correct your action. If it's unsound, ignore it. Either way, you win. Step 3. Daily debrief. At night, ask yourself, how many times did I abandon myself today just to look better in someone else's eyes? Write down one moment. Reflect without shame. Slowly, you'll notice the number shrinking. Now, let me throw you a pattern interrupt. What if I told you that rejection isn't the enemy, but the compass? Think about it. Every time someone misunderstands you, every time a door closes, every time silence greets your effort, you're being given information. This is not your place, not your people, not your path. Rejection clarifies. It reveals where your energy doesn't belong. That is priceless intelligence. It saves you years of chasing the wrong rooms. Here's a real-world story. A musician I once coached played countless shows to half-empty bars. People talked through his set, bartenders clattered glasses, no one clapped. He could have quit, telling himself, no one cares. But he reframed.
Because people can feel when you don't need them to approve. Your energy changes. You're not fishing for likes in conversation. You're not overreacting to small slights. You move like a man who knows his own weight. And that weight pulls people in. Not because you're louder, but because you're steadier. So let me ask you directly, where in your life are you still performing for perception? Is it at work? At home? Online? What would change if you allowed yourself to be misunderstood there? Not forever, not everywhere, but just once tomorrow. Try it. Write it down. And when it happens, notice the discomfort. That discomfort is your freedom muscle growing. Let's close this part with a line from Seneca. The greatest empire is to rule oneself. When you stop outsourcing your peace to other people's opinions, you stop being ruled. You become the empire. That's not arrogance. That's clarity. And a preview for what's next, we're going to take this even deeper. In the next part, I'll reveal the quiet ritual Marcus Aurelius used every night to release the day's noise and return to calm. It's a practice so simple you can do it in bed, yet powerful enough to reset your entire nervous system. If you've ever struggled to sleep because your mind won't stop racing, this is for you. We've explored mornings, we've explored perception, but there's another battlefield we rarely talk about, the night. How many times have you laid in bed replaying a conversation, worrying about tomorrow's problems, scrolling your phone at midnight because you can't turn your brain off? That racing mind is one of the biggest thieves of peace. And yet, Marcus Aurelius, an emperor carrying the weight of an empire, had a way of ending each day with calm. His secret was a nightly reset, a ritual that emptied the day of its noise so he could return to himself. Marcus wrote in his meditations, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive. And when you lie down,
Examine your actions of the day. He treated each night as a kind of audit, not a productivity, but a virtue. Did I act with justice? Did I live with courage? Did I waste my energy on things outside my control? He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was clearing his conscience so he could sleep in peace. In modern terms, it's cognitive diffusion, the practice of separating yourself from your thoughts rather than drowning in them. I'll be honest, for years I went to bed with my failures playing on loop. Every mistake, every awkward moment, every unfinished task, it all showed up right when I wanted rest. It felt like my mind had saved all the criticism for the one moment I couldn't distract myself. But then I started trying Marcus's method. At night, instead of replaying everything unconsciously, I sat with it intentionally. I asked 3 questions. What did I do well today? Where did I fail? And how will I improve tomorrow? Then, this is the crucial part. I left it there.
Once it was written, I didn't carry it into sleep. The page carried it for me. Slowly, the anxiety that used to rob my nights began to fade. Sleep became deeper. Mornings became lighter. The ritual wasn't just philosophy, it was medicine. Let's break it down into a ritual you can practice tonight. Step 1. Unload the noise. Take 5 minutes to journal everything swirling in your head. Don't edit, don't polish, just spill it. The email you forgot, the argument you replayed, the win you're proud of. Get it out of your head and onto paper. Neuroscience calls this externalization. Once it's out, your brain stops holding it on repeat. That act alone can lower nighttime cortisol. Step 2. The 3 questions. Write them at the top of the page. What did I do well today? Where did I fall short? How will I adjust tomorrow? Be specific, not I was good, right? I handled that tough conversation without raising my voice. Not I failed, right? I scrolled for 40 minutes when I meant to read. This clarity isn't about guilt, it's about ownership. Step 3. Release the outcome. Once you've written it, close the page. Marcus wrote, "Give yourself a gift, the present moment." You cannot change today once it's over. You can only prepare for tomorrow. This is where most people sabotage themselves. They ruminate instead of release. The journal isn't just reflection, it's closure. Now here's the twist. Many people try journaling and give up because it feels like homework. That's because they forget the final piece, gratitude. End each night with 1 line of gratitude. Not performative, not forced, real. Even something small. I had a warm meal. I laughed once today. I woke up. Gratitude shifts the nervous system from stress to rest. It's not woo-woo, it's biology. Studies show gratitude practices reduce anxiety and improve sleep quality. Marcus understood this long before science measured it. Seneca echoed the same truth. As is a tale, so is life. Not how long it is, but how good it is what matters. Every night was a chance to make peace with the chapter of that day, no matter how messy, no matter how short. You don't need a perfect day to sleep well. You need an honest day and the willingness to close it with grace. But let's make it real with a modern example. A CEO I once coached told me she couldn't sleep more than 4 hours a night. Her brain was a slideshow of unfinished projects. We implemented the Marcus ritual. At 9:30 every night, she wrote the 3 questions. At first, her entries were angry and messy, but slowly she began to notice patterns. She wasn't failing because she lacked talent. She was failing because she overloaded her plate. Within a month, she cut 2 projects, delegated 3 tasks, and started sleeping 6 to 7 hours. Her team noticed her calmer energy. Her kids noticed her patience. And it all started with 10 minutes of nightly clarity. Now, let me ask you directly, what's keeping you awake at night?
What thought has been looping in your head, stealing your rest? Imagine writing it down, facing it once, and then leaving it there. How different would your mornings feel? How much more energy would you have to actually solve the problem instead of replaying it? Here's your challenge for tonight. Set aside 10 minutes before bed. Paper, pen, 3 questions. Write 1 line of gratitude,
then close the book. If your mind tries to replay things in bed, remind yourself, it's already written. I'll face it tomorrow. That's not procrastination, that's power. You're training your mind to distinguish between reflection and rumination. And here's the best part. You don't need years to feel the change. Do this for 3 nights in a row and you'll notice it. By the 7th night, you'll wonder why you ever carried the day into your dreams. And by the 30th night, you'll feel like a different person. Not because your life is suddenly easier, but because you've learned to put each day down. Marcus Aurelius said, "Don't waste the rest of your life worrying about others unless it affects the common good." At night, this advice is even sharper. Don't waste your rest worrying about a day that's already gone. Let it go. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges. Tonight is for rest. So, as we close this section, remember this. Your day is not complete until you've put it down. End it with clarity. End it with honesty. End it with gratitude. And when you wake, you'll rise not with the weight of yesterday, but with the energy to face what's ahead. In the next part, we'll explore something just as powerful, but often overlooked, the role of anger and emotional mastery in Stoicism. Because while journaling calms the mind, managing anger transforms the soul. And once you learn to control anger, you become untouchable. We've prepared our mornings, we've learned to detach from perception, we've closed our nights with clarity. But there's a fire that still threatens to burn it all down if left unchecked. Anger. Anger is the emotion that can undo years of discipline in a single outburst. It can destroy relationships, ruin careers, and eat away at your health. And yet, the Stoics saw anger not as something to suppress, but as something to master. Seneca wrote an entire book called On Anger, where he called it the most hideous and frenzied of all emotions. He described how anger is eager for revenge, inflamed, and conscious of no restraints. In other words, once anger takes the wheel, reason is tied up in the trunk. And we've all felt it, that surge of heat in the chest, the tightening in the jaw, the quickening of breath. In that moment, your body becomes a hostage of your own emotions. I'll share a personal story. Years ago, I had a heated exchange with a colleague who dismissed months of work with a single careless comment. I felt the fire rise immediately. My first instinct was to snap back, to prove him wrong, to humiliate him the way I felt humiliated.
And I almost did, but something stopped me. In that half-second, I remembered Seneca's warning. The greatest remedy for anger is delay. So instead of speaking, I excused myself, walked outside, and took a long breath. When I returned, I wasn't calm, but I was in control. That single pause saved me from saying words I couldn't take back. It wasn't weakness. It was strength. Modern science backs this up. Psychologists call it the 90-second rule. When you feel triggered, the initial surge of stress hormones in your body, adrenaline, cortisol, lasts about 90 seconds. If you can wait it out without fueling it with more thoughts, the fire begins to die down. But if you replay the insult, imagine the argument, or stoke the flame with justifications, you extend the storm for hours, even days. The Stoics didn't have neuroscience, but they had wisdom. Delay is victory. So, how do you master anger in daily life? Let's look at 3 Stoic strategies, each backed by modern practice. First, expect the sparks. Marcus Aurelius began every morning reminding himself, "You will meet rude, arrogant, deceitful people today." Why? Because expecting rudeness robs it of shock. If you know sparks are coming, you don't stand in dry grass. You prepare water. In modern terms, this is trigger awareness. List your top 3 triggers: traffic, disrespect, interruptions.
Then rehearse your calm response before it happens. When the spark arrives, you're ready with water, not gasoline. Second, reframe the offense. Epictetus taught, when someone irritates you, realize that it is your own judgment that provokes you. In other words, the insult itself isn't the problem, it's your interpretation. If someone cuts you off in traffic, one interpretation is, they disrespected me. Another is, they're rushing to something urgent. The event is neutral. Your judgment creates the pain. Modern cognitive behavioral therapy calls this reappraisal. By changing the story, you change the feeling. Third, channel the energy. Seneca admitted anger has intensity, but he insisted it can be redirected. Think of it like fire. Left unchecked, it burns the house down. But harnessed, it cooks your food and warms your home. When you feel anger, instead of lashing out, channel it into constructive action. Lift weights, clean your space, write down the injustice you feel and turn it into a plan for change. The energy doesn't disappear, but it becomes fuel instead of destruction. Now let's ground this with a story. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison, much of it in brutal conditions. By any measure, he had every reason to leave prison consumed with rage. Yet when he walked out, he said, "As I walked out the door toward the gate that would lead to my freedom, I knew if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I'd still be in prison." That is Stoic mastery in action, turning anger into resolve, discipline, and constructive leadership. His anger became fuel, not a chain.
But here's the twist you might not expect. Anger often hides grief. We lash out not just because we're offended, but because something deeper hurts. A sense of disrespect, abandonment, betrayal. If you only fight the surface, you'll never heal the root. The Stoics weren't telling us to bury emotion. They were telling us to see clearly what lies underneath. Anger is often the mask. Clarity is what removes it. So let's make it practical with a nightly anger audit. Ask yourself, where did anger rise today? What story did I tell myself in that moment? Was that story true? What else could it have meant? Write it down. Over time, you'll notice patterns. And once you see the pattern, you can break it. Let me ask you directly. How many decisions in your life were made in anger, and how many of those do you regret? Contrast that with the decisions made in calm. Which ones built your life? Which ones burned bridges? This is the power of Stoic anger mastery. It doesn't mean you never feel it. It means you never let it rule you. Seneca gives us the anchor. The greatest remedy for anger is delay. Marcus sharpens it. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. And Epictetus closes it. Any person capable of angering you becomes your master. Think about that last one. When you lose control, you hand someone else the strings. But when you pause, reframe, and redirect, you reclaim your authority. So here's your practice for tomorrow. When anger rises, don't fight it. Don't feed it. Buy yourself 90 seconds. Breathe. Delay. Ask, what else could this mean? Then decide, not react. Try it once tomorrow, just once, and watch how the outcome shifts. As we close this part, remember, mastery over anger is mastery over your life. Because if you can't command yourself in heat, you can't command yourself at all. And when you can, when you own your response, you become untouchable. In the next part, we'll explore something even deeper, the role of solitude and silence in building inner strength. Because while anger threatens to pull us outward, solitude pulls us back in. And when you learn to walk with silence, you discover a power the noisy world can't touch. We've dealt with anger. Now let's move to something quieter, but just as powerful: solitude. The world today is louder than ever. Notifications, news, endless conversations, opinions flying at you from every direction. And yet, silence, the very thing that could heal us, has become something most people fear. But for the Stoics, solitude was not punishment. It was preparation. It was the furnace where inner strength was forged. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "People look for retreats for themselves, in the country, by the coast, or in the hills, but it is in your power, whenever you choose, to retreat into yourself." Think about that. He was the most powerful man in the world, with wars, politics, betrayal surrounding him. And still, he said the best retreat wasn't in a villa or on a holiday. It was inside.
Solitude is not about being away from others. It's about being with yourself fully, without distraction. Let me be real with you. The first time I intentionally sat in silence, without my phone, without music, without conversation, it was uncomfortable. My mind screamed at me. Every insecurity, every unfinished task, every regret rushed in. That's why most people run from solitude. They're afraid of meeting themselves. But here's the paradox. What feels like loneliness at first slowly becomes clarity. And clarity, as we have said, is the first freedom. Carl Jung put it beautifully. Solitude is for me a fount of healing which makes my life worth living. He wasn't praising isolation. He was praising the stillness where you finally see what's true. Because in silence, you notice how many of your thoughts aren't even yours, how many fears were inherited, how many desires were implanted. Solitude reveals what's real and what's noise. Modern science echoes this. Studies on default mode network activity show that when the brain rests, when you're not distracted by tasks, it integrates experiences, solves problems, and generates creativity. In other words, silence is not empty. Silence is work being done beneath the surface. That's why some of your best ideas come in the shower, on a walk, or in the quiet moments before sleep. The Stoics didn't have fMRI scans, but they knew the same truth. Solitude makes you sharp. So how do you train yourself to embrace solitude instead of fear it? Let's make it practical. Step 1, schedule it. Don't wait for silence to find you. It won't. The world is too loud. Carve out 15 minutes a day. No phone, no book, no podcast. Just you. Start small. 15 minutes of boredom is better than a lifetime of distraction. Step 2, anchor it. Most people sit in silence and spiral. The trick is to anchor with a question. Marcus Aurelius used self-inquiry. Am I acting with justice? Am I living as nature intended? You can use a simpler one. What do I actually want today? Let the silence sharpen the answer. Step 3, embrace the discomfort. The first few times it will feel awkward. You'll want to get up. Stay. The awkwardness is proof you're detoxing from noise. Over time, that awkwardness becomes peace. Let me share a story. A client of mine, a lawyer, was terrified of solitude. Every moment was filled with calls, music, TV, scrolling. He said silence made him anxious. I challenged him. 5 minutes of silence a day, nothing more. At first, he hated it. His mind raced. But after 2 weeks, he told me something unexpected. I realized I've been making choices I don't even believe in. I've been living on autopilot. Silence exposed the truth. That truth allowed him to adjust his career, his relationships, his health. Today, he credits those 5 minutes with saving his life trajectory. That's the power of solitude. Here's the twist. The world conditions us to believe that silence equals weakness.
That if you're not expressing every emotion, every thought, you're hiding. But the Stoics knew the opposite. Silence is strength. Not everything needs to be broadcast. Not every wound needs to be narrated. Some things are sacred precisely because they're kept within. Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Solitude is the place where you see the difference. So let me ask you, when was the last time you sat with yourself, truly, without distraction? What did you hear? Was it painful? Was it clarifying? That voice inside, The quiet one you often ignore might be the one you need to trust most, but you'll never hear it if you drown it out with noise. Try this tonight. Turn off every device for 10 minutes. Sit in silence. When your mind screams, "This is boring," smile. That's your training. You're learning to be at home with yourself. And when you become at home with yourself, no rejection, no criticism, no loneliness can unseat you, because you've built a sanctuary inside. Marcus gives us the anchor once again. Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul. That's not just poetry, that's practice. And the more you retreat there, the more unshakable you become. So, as we close this section, remember, solitude is not exile, it's return. It's the return to yourself. And when you can walk with silence, you carry a power the noisy world cannot touch. In the next part, we'll explore how loss and adversity, what the Stoics called the obstacle, becomes the path forward. Because it's not just about surviving solitude, it's about using life's hardest blows as the very material for building your resilience. We've sat with silence, and we've seen how solitude sharpens us. Now let's talk about something harder, loss and adversity. Because no matter how well you prepare, life will still break things you love. Careers collapse, health falters, relationships end. The Stoics didn't shy away from this. They leaned into it. They believed that adversity wasn't just unavoidable, it was essential. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This line is famous because it cuts to the heart of Stoicism. Life is not against you when obstacles appear. Life is training you. The block in your path is not the end of your journey, it is your journey. I'll give you a personal story. A few years ago, I lost a major project I had poured my soul into. Months of late nights, financial risk, sacrifice, all gone in a single phone call. At first, I felt crushed. My identity was tied to that work. But after the initial sting, something unexpected happened. I started seeing doors I hadn't noticed before. Skills I had developed under pressure, negotiation, resilience, focus, suddenly became assets in a new direction. The project died, but the person who walked away from it was stronger. Looking back, the loss wasn't a detour. It was the way forward.
Modern psychology calls this post-traumatic growth. Research shows that many people emerge from hardship not just scarred, but stronger, clearer, more compassionate. They discover resilience, deeper relationships, sharper priorities. The Stoics knew this without the studies. Seneca said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." Pain is not the opposite of growth. It is the engine of growth. So, how do you apply this when you're in the middle of loss? When you're standing in the ashes, not the victory? Here are 3 Stoic practices for adversity. First, name the obstacle clearly. Most suffering multiplies because we blur the problem. We mix fear, assumption, and story until the actual challenge is hidden. Marcus trained himself to strip things down to their essence. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Write down the obstacle in one sentence, without drama. Not, "My life is over," but "I lost this job." Not, "I'm a failure," but "My business closed." Naming it cleanly keeps you from drowning in narrative. Second, ask the transforming question. What can this make me? The Stoics didn't ask, "Why me?" They asked, "How can this strengthen me?" Epictetus was once a slave. He lost his freedom, was beaten, and lived with a crippled leg. But instead of being defined by loss, he became one of the most powerful teachers of resilience in history. He reframed every obstacle into a lesson. That's the mindset. Not, what did I lose, but what am I gaining through this? Third, take one small step forward immediately. Adversity paralyzes us because we think we need a perfect plan. But the Stoics lived by daily progress. One step, one action. If you've lost your job, make one call. If you're grieving, take one walk. If you failed, write one lesson down. The obstacle becomes the way when you keep moving through it, not when you stand staring at it. Let me give you a real-world story. Thomas Edison, after years of work, lost his factory to a fire. Millions of dollars, decades of effort, gone in one night. Most people would collapse. Edison looked at the flames and said, "There is great value in disaster. All our mistakes are burned up. Thank God we can start anew." Within weeks, he rebuilt, innovated, and went on to create some of his greatest work. The fire wasn't the end, it was the path. But here's the twist. Adversity doesn't just build resilience, it reveals it. When life strips away comfort, you discover what cannot be taken. You discover what's indestructible. And often, it's not what you expected. You realize you can live with less. You realize you can endure more. You realize your worth is not tied to what you lost, but to the clarity that remains. Seneca anchors us again. No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself.
Adversity is not proof of your weakness. It's the stage for your strength. So let me ask you, what obstacle are you facing right now that feels like a dead end? What if it's not a wall, but a doorway? What if the pain itself is trying to carve you into someone stronger? Can you reframe it, not as punishment, but as practice? Here's your challenge for this week. Choose one obstacle in your life. Write it in one sentence. Then write one thing you can do, just one, that transforms it into fuel. That's it. And when you do, you'll begin to feel it, the shift from victim to author, from blocked to moving, from stuck to unstoppable. That's the Stoic path. That's resilience in action. Marcus said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Let that line echo in your mind every time you face difficulty. Say it when the news is bad. Say it when you feel crushed. Say it until you believe it. Because the moment you accept it, you stop asking for an easier life and start building the strength for a greater one. In the next part, we'll take this one step further. How to deal with criticism and judgment. Because if obstacles shape you, criticism tests you. And when you master judgment, both from others and yourself, you become truly unshakable. We've explored how obstacles become the way, but let's face it, sometimes the hardest obstacles aren't events, they're people, specifically their opinions, their criticism, their judgment. And if you've ever been misunderstood, criticized, or ridiculed, you know how much it can sting. The Stoics knew this too. They faced public scorn, betrayal, even exile. And yet, they learned to treat criticism as smoke, visible, irritating, but without substance unless you inhale it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If an action or word is right, don't be turned away by criticism. If it is not right, correct yourself. If it is right, why be upset? Someone else's judgment is not your concern." That's clarity. Criticism only matters in two cases. It's either true, and you should improve, or it's false, and you should ignore it. Everything else is wasted energy. I'll share a story. Early in my speaking career, I gave a talk I thought went well. Afterwards, someone approached me and said, "Honestly, I found it boring, not engaging at all." My stomach dropped.
My first instinct was to defend myself, to explain. But later that night I remembered Epictetus. If someone criticizes you and you feel hurt, it's not the insult that harms you, but your judgment of it. I asked myself, was the criticism true? Partially. I had rushed through examples. So I improved. The rest of their judgment? Noise. I left it there. That night I slept well, not because I wasn't criticized, but because I knew what to keep and what to discard. Modern psychology calls this feedback filtering. Studies show high performers don't avoid criticism, they process it quickly. They ask, is it accurate? Is it useful? If yes, they adapt.
If no, they let it go. What they don't do is obsess over the delivery. Because let's be real, most criticism is poorly packaged. But wisdom is the ability to extract value even from clumsy words. Here's a practical Stoic framework for dealing with criticism. Step 1. Pause. Your body will want to react immediately. Breathe once. Remember Seneca's line, the greatest remedy for anger is delay. That pause gives you space. Step 2. Separate tone from truth. Maybe the person was rude, maybe they were harsh. Fine. Ignore the packaging. Ask only, is there truth here? If yes, use it. If no, discard it. Step 3. Redirect your focus. Marcus again. It is not the actions of others which disturb us, but our interpretations of them. Don't dwell on their words. Dwell on your path. Ask, am I moving toward virtue, justice, wisdom, courage, temperance? If yes, keep walking. Let's ground this with a real-world story. When Epictetus was teaching, some mocked him for his limp, the result of a broken leg from his days as a slave. Instead of defending himself, he turned it into a lesson. You can chain my leg, but not my will. The crowd laughed less after that. Why? Because he revealed the truth. Judgment can wound the body, but it cannot touch the soul unless you allow it. But here's the twist. Sometimes the harshest criticism isn't from others, it's from yourself. That inner voice that says you're not enough, you failed, you'll never make it. Stoicism offers the same medicine here. Pause, separate tone from truth, and redirect. Some self-criticism is valuable. It points to areas for growth. But much of it is just inherited noise. Old judgments from parents, teachers, society. The Stoic practice is to examine it calmly and decide, is this true or is this just a shadow? Seneca offers us comfort here. A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. Criticism is friction. Painful, yes, but also polishing. And when you remember that, judgment loses its power to poison you. It becomes sharpening instead. So let me ask you, what recent criticism has been echoing in your head? Can you pause, separate tone from truth, and either improve or discard? Imagine how much lighter your mind would feel if you stopped carrying every careless comment as a verdict. Here's your practice. The next time criticism comes, don't respond immediately. Write it down. Circle what's useful, cross out what's noise. Then act on the circle, ignore the cross, and move forward. That's it. 3 minutes, and you'll notice the echo in your mind fades faster. Marcus Aurelius gives us the final word. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Don't waste your life debating critics. Live your values. That's the most powerful answer to judgment. In the next part, we'll go deeper. How to practice presence, living here and now without being hijacked by past regrets or future fears, because judgment often lives in the past and the future.
But power lives only in the present. We've talked about criticism, about the sting of judgment and how to stand firm in it. But there's another trap that steals your strength every day, being everywhere except here. The Stoics were obsessed with presence, not because it sounded poetic, but because they knew that all power exists only in the moment you're standing in. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." 4 words, yet they could transform your life. Why? Because most suffering comes from two illusions, the past and the future. The past chains you with regret. If only I had. The future torments you with fear. What if I fail? And while you're locked in those places, the present, the only place you can act, slips away. Think about this. How many hours of your life have you spent replaying a mistake you cannot change? How many nights have you lost worrying about events that never even happened? Neuroscience backs Marcus here. Studies on rumination show that replaying regrets is strongly linked with depression. Studies on worry show that most imagined fears never occur. Yet the body reacts as if they're happening right now. Your nervous system can't tell the difference. That's why you feel exhausted. You've been living in worlds that don't exist. Let me share a story. I once worked with a man who lost a fortune in a failed investment. Years later, he was still haunted, still replaying it every morning, every night. His body lived in constant tension. I asked him to try something radical. For 1 week, every time the past replayed, say out loud, "That's done." At first it felt forced, but by day 5, he noticed something. The past didn't drag him as hard. He started noticing the present, his daughter's laughter, his health, the projects he could still build. By naming the past as done, he gave himself permission to live now. That's what Marcus meant. Confine yourself to the present. Epictetus put it even more sharply. How long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself? He wasn't asking about tomorrow. He was asking about now. Because tomorrow isn't real. Only this breath, this choice, this step. So, how do we practice presence in a noisy world? Let's break it down into 3 Stoic exercises you can begin today. First, the anchor breath. When your mind spirals into past or future, pause. Breathe in for 4 seconds. Breathe out for 6. Notice your body, your shoulders, your jaw, your chest. Tell yourself, this is now. 1 breath is enough to pull you back from worlds that don't exist. You don't need a 30-minute meditation. You need 1 breath of awareness. Second, the one thing rule. Multitasking is the enemy of presence. Marcus never ruled Rome and checked his scrolls at the same time. He did one thing fully. So, choose 1 task, set a timer for 25 minutes, and do only that. No phone, no tabs. Full attention. Research shows single tasking increases productivity and reduces stress.
But more importantly, it reclaims your mind from scattering. Try it once tomorrow and watch how grounded you feel. Third, the evening release. We already talked about Marcus's nightly audit. Add this twist. Before bed, say aloud, "The day is complete." It sounds simple, but it trains your mind to put down the weight of unfinished tasks. Tomorrow will come. Tonight is for rest. This single phrase can stop the spiral of late-night worry. Now here's the twist. Presence is not just about peace, it's about power. When you're fully here, you make better decisions, you perform at a higher level, you connect more deeply with others. Have you ever been in a conversation with someone who was truly present? They weren't checking their phone, they weren't half listening, they were with you. That energy is magnetic. Presence isn't soft, it's commanding. Seneca reminds us, true happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. That's the formula. Enjoy now. Not when you succeed, not when you're perfect, not when others approve. Now. So let me ask you, Where in your life are you not present? At the dinner table, but scrolling your phone? At work, but worrying about bills? In bed, but replaying arguments? What would shift if you chose, just for 10 minutes, to be fully here? Here's your challenge. Pick one moment tomorrow and make it sacred. Maybe breakfast, maybe your workout, maybe a walk. No phone, no distraction, just presence. Taste the food, feel the air, listen to the sounds. It will feel strange at first, like you've been missing from your own life, because in many ways you have. But once you feel it, once you taste real presence, you'll want more, and that hunger will change everything. Marcus gives us the anchor again. Do not let your thoughts wander. Concentrate every minute like a Roman, like a man, on doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness. That's it. Do what's in front of you. That's presence. That's power. In the next part, we'll go even further, tying all of this together into a framework of self-mastery. Because at the core of Stoicism, everything points to one truth. If you can rule yourself, nothing outside can truly rule you. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That line is not just wisdom, it's a blueprint. Because when you trace back every practice we've explored, they all sharpen one thing: your command over yourself. Think of it as a chain. Each link is one of the habits we've built. Premeditation of adversity, so the world doesn't surprise you. Detachment from perception, so other people's opinions don't define you. The nightly audit, so yesterday's weight doesn't follow you into tomorrow. Mastery of anger, so heat doesn't make your choices for you. Solitude, so you know your own voice. Presence, so you actually live the moment you're in. And resilience through adversity, so obstacles become your training ground. Each link by itself is strong, but when you connect them, you build a chain that nothing can break. Let me give you an image. Imagine you're a ship at sea. The waves are life, chaotic, unpredictable, violent at times. Most people build flimsy boats patched together with approval, comfort, and distraction. One big storm, and they sink. The Stoics built differently. They reinforced their hull with discipline, their sails with clarity, their compass with virtue. The storm still came, but they sailed through, not because the sea was kinder, but because they were stronger. That's what self-mastery looks like. But let's be clear, mastery is not perfection. The Stoics doubted, they failed, they got angry, they suffered. Marcus Aurelius himself wrote in his Meditations about falling short again and again. Mastery isn't about never breaking. It's about always returning to your center. Always remembering, this is mine, my mind, my choices, my response. So how do you live this framework in daily life? Here's a step-by-step you can start tomorrow. Step 1. Morning intention. Spend 5 minutes with premeditatio malorum. Visualize the likely challenges. Write your control audit. What's mine, what's not? Decide in advance how you'll meet the day. Step 2. Midday check. When criticism, anger, or distraction comes, pause. Breathe. Separate truth from noise. Delay. Respond from clarity, not compulsion. One calm moment is a victory. Step 3. Evening release. Journal the 3 questions. What went well? Where did I fall? How can I adjust? Write 1 line of gratitude. Then close the page. The day is complete. Step 4. Weekly solitude. Carve out at least 1 block of silence. No phone, no distraction. Ask yourself, am I living in alignment with my values? Listen for the quiet answer. Step 5. Reframe adversity. When the storm hits, and it will, remember, the obstacle is the way. Write the loss in 1 sentence.
Ask, what can this make me? Then take one step forward, just one. This framework doesn't remove pain. It transforms it. It doesn't promise applause. It teaches you not to need it. It doesn't make life easy. It makes you strong enough for life as it is. That's Stoicism, not an escape from the world, but an unshakable way of living in it. Seneca gives us the final reminder: the greatest empire is to rule oneself. And that empire is built not in one grand gesture, but in small daily acts. Each breath, each pause, each choice to return to yourself. Over time, those acts accumulate into something indestructible. So let me ask you one last question. What would your life look like if you truly mastered yourself?
If no insult could shake you, no silence could break you, no obstacle could stop you. If your foundation was built so deep that storms only revealed your strength, that life is possible, not someday, today. It starts with the next breath, the next choice, the next step. If this journey has spoken to you, subscribe and stay with us. Not for me, for you. Because resilience is not a gift you're born with, it's a skill you build. And together, we're building it, one practice at a time. On your screen right now, there's another lesson waiting for you. Click it. Keep walking this path. Because your freedom, your strength, your mastery, they're not in the future. They're in you, right now.